St. Paul. And then I think 63 on the chain.
This is
We're this one?
We're good.
Oh, this is a black mark. I mean, the black monument. Okay. Good afternoon. Excuse me. I'm going to talk about my journey thus far. Most people who know me know I usually use cards to speak from, but because there's a limited amount of time, I decided to type it out so that I wouldn't keep you for more than a couple of hours. I was born the third child of 4 in Washington, D.C. My parents are Reverend Edward P. Felton and O.C. Ann Upshaw Felton. My given name was Elvira, and where's my namesake? Amelia. So there are 2 Amelias here in this room. My father was born in Hertford, North Carolina, and my mother in Caroline County, Virginia. I had a very well-rounded upbringing and achieved well in school, very active in sports, basketball, track and field, softball, volleyball. Schools were segregated during my childhood, but I know we received an excellent education. Our teachers were very well prepared. Most of them had master's degrees, PhDs, but they could not teach in the public or the private white schools. So they were then in our community, which was very, very good for us. We lived in a very closed community. Our neighbors were professionals and non-professionals. Doctors, lawyers, teachers, and other professionals lived next door to custodians, truck drivers, etc. We all looked out for each other, and our parents could, or any parent could and would discipline children in our communities. The children listened, they straightened up, and respected what the adults had to say, because they knew where to get back to their parents. We lived in a loving, strong, supportive village. I completed my undergraduate degree at Howard University and went directly to graduate school, the University of Wisconsin in Madison, Wisconsin. I excelled in all my courses because I was very well prepared. Likewise, when I returned from Tanzania, I got a master's in business and public administration at Southeastern University with a 4-point average. Well prepared because our teachers stressed that we had to do more than study harder than and be very well prepared to compete in today's world. So we worked very hard. My faith journey. Yes, I'm a PK, a preacher's kid. My dad was a Baptist minister, and we children spent all day in church on Sunday. My dad's church was in Georgetown, but we were allowed to go to Sunday school in our community. It was a Methodist Sunday school with the children. In our community, we were involved in lots of activities. All the activities, or many of the activities, were in the Sunday school, in the church, and we were in activities during the week, on Saturdays, all day long at War Memorial Church. After Sunday school, my sisters and brother and I took the bus and streetcar to our father's church in Georgetown. I played the piano for the youth choir at War Memorial Church, and later on in high school, I played for a Baptist church in Tacoma Park. After completing my work in Wisconsin, I returned to D.C. to teach at Howard University. During those days, I attended All Souls Unitarian Church on 16th Street and taught in Sunday school. Irving and I were married in All Souls Church with Dr. Duncan Howard presiding. You see, my faith journey was somewhat ecumenical. My interests, hobbies, talents, and special skills. I'm an avid reader, love swimming, love watching soccer games. I even played field hockey on a women's team with Jean Snodgrass and some of my physical education instructors on Saturdays and Sundays when I was in undergraduate school. My experience around race and equity. Though I was brought up in a very protective, loving, and supportive environment, I was aware of racial inequities. Laws were very, very tough on race mixing. Though many powerful men in the South took advantage of their female slaves, just look at the mixed race people from the lineage of President George Washington. When I was very young, a mixed couple lived down the street from us. We were told that though the wife was white, she and her husband, he was black, could not live in a white community, so they lived in our neighborhood. Also, some of you probably have seen the Loving story about the interracial couple, Mildred Jeter, a black woman, and Richard Loving, a white man who had been jailed in Caroline County because they were married to each other. Mildred Jeter and her family lived in the same community where my mother was born and raised. My father told us of the time when white men in his town had planned to lynch his brother. A group of white boys had jumped my Uncle Percy. He was then in his teens, but he got the best of them. My grandfather had a country store, and one of the white men who frequented the store rushed to tell my grandfather that several white men were planning to lynch my uncle that night. My grandfather had my uncle, who was then at the store at the time, get in the back of this white man's truck. They put a blanket over him, they put potatoes over him, they put vegetables over him, and drove all night to Virginia, where he stayed with my great aunt, went to school there. When he completed school, he later moved to Washington, D.C. Well, people can understand why my father never let his children go to Hereford, North Carolina, where he was born. It was about 25 years ago when I was able to go, take my father, my mother, and our siblings went for a family reunion in Hereford, North Carolina. I really enjoyed my time at All Souls Church. Dr. Duncan Howard, our pastor, was a leading voice for social justice during the Civil Rights era. An impassioned speaker, Dr. Howard condemned racial prejudice and championed liberal government policies in national defense, education, and social services. He often said, "I think it's the job of the church to throw political, economic, and social issues into moral perspective and to see the whole in its spiritual dimensions." I was very happy to be a part of the Sunday school at All Souls. I taught Sunday school classes. Reverend James Reeves at that time was the associate minister of All Souls. He also taught with us. You might remember Jim Reed was clubbed to death in Selma, Alabama in 1965 after participating in a civil rights demonstration. There have been many racial incidences that I've found myself involved in, but the one closest to home, right here in Montgomery County, I'll share with you. My family and I had returned from Tanzania, where we lived for 2.5 years. It was 1997, and we were renting a home in Columbia, Maryland, waiting for our house to be completed on Windermere Circle, where we now live. I was driving east on Randolph Road and made a left turn onto Georgia Avenue. There was a black car that was following my car as I made the turn. Of course, I was wearing my beautiful African dress with my gele, African head wrap. The next thing, I heard a police siren and looked up to see that the lights were signaling me to pull over. I pulled into the gas station. The police came over to my car and I asked, "What's the problem?" He said, "You drove through the red light." I told him the light was turning yellow as I was turning, and there was a car that followed me through the lights. I asked, "Why did you not pull that man over?" He only said he wanted to see my license and registration. I gave him the document. He said, "This is not your car. Where did you get that car from?" I explained that the car belonged to my father-in-law. He tried to telephone my father-in-law and got no answer, so I guess he assumed I had stolen the car. Now, my father-in-law was a farmer, and I imagined he was in the field doing something, and of course they did not have cell phones at the time, and if they did, I doubt that my father-in-law would have used it. So the next thing I knew, I was asked to get in the police car. He drove me to the police station and would not let me call my husband. Well, it was my turn to appear before the official who was hearing cases. He asked about my background. When I said I had taught at Howard University, he asked if I knew several of his friends and former colleagues, because I think he too had studied there. I told him that I did. He immediately, as the program said, the police had made a major mistake, and he let me go. The next day, the Montgomery County Police Chief came to our home in Columbia, Maryland, after he heard I'd been pulled over by one of his policemen. The chief knew me from Newton, Massachusetts, where we formed BCON, Black Citizens of Newton, to train police in Newton how to react positively to people of color. This was after two white policemen went into a bank in Newton after hours with guns drawn, handcuffed a black Harvard University divinity student who was working as a night custodian in the bank to make money to pay his tuition. I've always been an activist, working with individual and organizations, fighting for civil rights and trying to help attain racial equality for people. I've participated in literally hundreds of marches and rallies. The biggest one was the one in 1963, the March for Freedom, where Martin Luther King made his famous speech. And Irving and I walked from Whittier Street, Upper 16th Street near Walter Reed Hospital to Lincoln Memorial. And at that time, I think I might have been about 3 months pregnant. My father was saying, don't go, there'll be problems, but as you know, that was a very, very peaceful occasion. Also in the early 60s, I'm wearing a pin from the 60s, Adam Payton Powell. I don't know whether any of you remember Adam Payton in the early 60s. And I'm packing things, downsizing, so I did not get out any more buttons. These were just the ones that were there. The most recent was one in Montgomery County with the Minority Scholars. This program was started at Walter Johnson about 10 years ago, and 3 years later, I think they had 3 schools involved, and this year we're happy to say that there are 23 high schools out of 25 high schools participating in this program. And it's amazing to see how many Latino children, African American children, and other children of color participating in the advanced courses and going on to college and getting lots of different scholarships. For many years, I worked with the NAACP in Massachusetts. That's the National Association of Advancement for Colored People. When I moved to Montgomery County, I was vice president for several years. I worked in the central office at Montgomery County Public Schools, helping to plan human relation workshops, organizing and facilitating multicultural training for teachers in the system. And 2 years later, I worked with Maryland State Department of Education, evaluating and revising high school programs. Then I resigned in 1985 to spend full time with AHEAD, our program in Africa. What have I learned or unlearned around issues of social injustice? I must admit, I have learned a lot, I have grown a bit, or quite a lot, and I probably will be continually learning until my last days. Some of the things that have really made a difference, I think, are, number one, I've learned to be a much better listener. Number two, I've learned to step back and let others take the lead. Number three, I've become more tolerant of people with different beliefs, different ideas, different viewpoints. And I've encouraged others to share their beliefs, though they're different from mine. Well, I've had so many experiences related to race and equity, and it'll take much longer for me to explain any others. But I just want to let you know, at this point, I won't take nothing for my journey. Sometimes the road was weary. I've had rocks and bolts, knocks, big boulders, many challenges that I've worked to overcome. But I've enjoyed so many joyful days with family, my family here at Clinton, and my family here at Indy UMC, friends, acquaintances here and far abroad. I've come too far, and I will not turn around. I am forward bound. I thank you.